Alright, so in this video I'm going to demonstrate some issues I'm having with color management in Photoshop, and some color correction stuff as well. I've used DisplayCal 3.8.1 and the i1 Display Pro, and I've calibrated and profiled this display with these settings. So this is my main display, it's the Asus VG248QE. I like this monitor. It's 1080p and 144 Hz. I have it set to use the i1. Just out of principle, I like the idea of having the white and black level compensation turned on. It just makes it slightly more accurate, but takes a little bit longer. And it accommodates for a display that might be warming up or changing its brightness. I don't mess with these. I have full range turned on because I don't want it using the compressed range, because I don't need to have it save any information, unlike broadcast. There is a correction that was built for this display using the i1. This was just automatically selected, so I never changed it. For calibration, these are the settings I'm using. I use the interactive display adjustment to change the RGB levels on the display using the built-in menu. I've changed the observer. This might actually be causing some of my issues. I haven't tested all of these because there's a lot and I don't know exactly what would be the correct one to use. I just saw that this was newer and I thought that means it must have replaced something that needed to be replaced from an older year. Let me know if that could be my issue. I like using my white point at 7500 Kelvin instead of like 6000 or 5000. It's a little bit cooler, but from growing up on like older computers and the monitors, the whites always seem to be a little bit cooler and crisper, and I naturally, when I have it set to 7500, white on the screen just looks like white. So I would like to keep that. I don't think that's causing any of my issues. Not changing the white or black level, using Gamma 2.2 on the curve. Not changing any of this. I'm not using the ambient light level adjustment. For the first week or two I got the i1, I did have that set up using their software. That was a long time ago. But I didn't like that it was changing the white balance on me, and I usually work in a dark room anyway, so I don't need that. And I've got a really fast computer, so the calibration speed can handle being really high. For the profile, I have it set to a LUT and a matrix. This could also be a source of some issues. I like the idea that it's one file that has both in it, but I don't know exactly what the benefits of using any of these other ones would be. I've heard that the matrix is more accurate, or is it the LUT that's more accurate? I think the LUT is a smaller file size. Oh gosh, I don't even know. I can't keep track of this stuff. I wish there was some better documentation on that. Not using the compensation here, high quality profile. And I have actually been setting this to auto optimized and 425 panels. I used to leave this just default, which seems to be using some setting from here. I don't know. And then I calibrate with that. And this monitor gets about 97 to 99% sRGB range, which is perfect for me. I'm just using sRGB as my color space because of the work I do digitally, through graphic design and web design. And sRGB is the closest color space we have to a globally accessible and agreed upon space. So I want to stick with that. So DisplayCal also has some options in here there's this background application that runs all the time, and the icon is telling me that it has loaded the profile. I have it set to load the calibration on the displays. I have 2 displays. They have 2 different calibrations, and they are set up properly as far as I can tell. I can reset the gamma table right here. I have it set to load the calibration when I log in and preserve it. This option, I've read a little bit about it. This is set up so that if a program that requires the monitor profile like moves to another monitor that has a different monitor profile, it will like automatically switch it, I guess. But I don't know if that's even how it's supposed to work or if it's even working. You can set the bit depth and stuff. And there's a little shortcut here to profile associations, and this is the profile that it created, and it set it as default for this display. I could also go into the, is it called the color profile? I can go into the color profile settings. This is my main display. It's got that same combination profile on it. In Windows, you always have to go into the submenus. Here we go, color management. Here's that same monitor, and I have this unchecked. I don't know if this needs to be checked or not. I think display cal controls that. It has the same profile set as default. I've deleted some old ones from way back when, but I have everything in the advanced menu set to default, not using this option, which I think uses that perceptual calibration thing in this menu. And this is just to be able to change the settings, but yeah, these are all set to default this way. The correction also seems to be working on this monitor, and a little bit on, I have a second monitor, but it's a really old screen, and trying to correct it to be similar to the same doesn't really work that well. But on this screen, pretty much everything looks awesome. Like even this wallpaper looks like the correct colors and the correct color temperature and everything. Like watching videos through Firefox, those look great. And by great, I don't mean like the subjective, like Best Buy TV syndrome, like smash the saturation and the contrast. No, I mean like it looks right. Which is great, because that's what you want from a color-corrected monitor, is an accurate representation of what the content creators are making for your screen. So in Photoshop, let's go to color settings. It's way down here in the menu. So I've been using these color settings, but I'm actually going to change this a little bit. sRGB, this is the standard. For a few months, I was actually using my monitor profile because I thought that was meant to go here. It's even at the top of the list in its own little section. But I'm slowly learning a little bit more about the working spaces in Photoshop, and it sounds like you absolutely want to use sRGB 2.1 on this. I don't do much CMYK print work. I usually do that in InDesign anyway. And I'm learning more about how to manage embedded profiles, so I'm leaving this on and I'm leaving all the options on so I can choose. Not going to change this. This is superior, relative superior. Using all of these options. No, not desaturating. I don't know. This must be for print work. I'm actually going to turn this off. There was a great video by Minute Physics talking about the physics of light and how Photoshop, without this option, doesn't blend colors properly. But this only changes the mixing between layers and not between colors of the same layer. Like if you were to blur like red and green together, it would turn into like a brown instead of more of a yellow. But it sounds like using lab color instead of RGB solves that problem. So I'm just going to turn this off and leave that default. All right. So this is where this is going to get interesting. Let's, for example, make a new document. And this is going to use the sRGB working space because that's my default. I'm going to set it to 1000 by 1000, kind of sizable. It doesn't need to be that big or any bigger, but leave this at default, RGB 8-bit, background white, all default settings. I'm going to grab the gradient tool, and there's this preset rainbow gradient, which uses, I believe it's 100% red. Yes, so it's full red channel RGB, and I believe it uses full green as well. Yes, so it's got red, green, and I think, oh crap, I hate these controls for gradients. And then, yes, this is 100% blue, so it's got the RGB mix in there and some other colors to compare. And I've been just clicking here and clicking here. There's the full Roy G. Biv. And I can tell already, you know, I was just talking about how this monitor correction looked great. This looks slightly off. It looks a little bit washed out, a little bit desaturated. I'm seeing some banding, especially in through here and down here, where the colors don't feel very smooth. And this green feels really flat up here. And so, like, for example, a weird workaround I've been noticing is that if the preview of the colors doesn't look proper in Photoshop, I can go to View, Proof Setup, set it to Monitor RGB, and then turn this on, and immediately I can see this is like full-blown green, red, blue. The banding's gone. It's smooth. This looks proper. Like if I was given an image that had full red, green, and blue in it, and I opened it up with the Colored Manage application, this is how I would expect it to look using my monitor correction and from what I know of RGB. So let's turn that back off, and let's just, this is the way I've been saving PNGs and JPEGs. Instead of going to the export menu or even this legacy, save for Web 1, I just save, not embedding the profile. Well, I guess there isn't even an option. I don't completely understand that. Let's just go to my desktop, and I'm just going to call this sRGB 1 PNG, save, medium file size. Don't want to spend too much trying to save this. Alright, so now we're previewing the image in ImageGlass, which, as far as I know, is a color managed application, and it manages colors properly. It passes that whacked RGB test that I can pull up in a little bit, and it's got this neat little color picker here. So I can go to this corner of the image, and it's, do I have to click? Ah, yeah, there we go. So it's got RGBA, so no transparency, full red channel. This should be somewhere near full blue. It's somewhere in here, and there should be green here as well. And it looks proper on my monitor. It looks like the subpixels for red, green, and blue are all being displayed faithfully. And if we were to compare this with Photoshop, I mean, there's no comparison. I mean, here, let me try to get this a little bit closer to the corner, get this out of the way, and then even just like put this here. There's a little bit of a shadow and there's a window border, but like, if you were trying to tell me that these two color managed applications were managing colors in the exact same way, and these are the exact same colors in the same color space, you would be lying to me if this is how people work with color management in Photoshop. This just seems really broken in like a weird way I can't describe, really. I'm having a difficulty with that. That's why I'm making this video, right? I mean, Oh my god, wow. But if we go back and we turn on the monitor preview, and how do we close this? No, whatever, it'll stay there. Now, with the monitor preview, which I'm being told if you turn the proof colors with the monitor RGB, if you turn that on, it actually bypasses all color management in Photoshop. Now this is starting to look very similar. It's ever so slightly different. If I were to take a screenshot of these two and like overlap them and do a difference match, they're not exactly the same, but it's way closer. Like I can work with this in Photoshop. And knowing that my preview in Photoshop, as soon as I save it, will look, well, like close to 100% the same, that would be really comfortable for me. But knowing that it can go from this to this just by saving it, I mean, I could be putting in a lot of work on a project that, well, in this example, we took like 2 seconds, but I can do so much color work and I can lose just about all of it just by saving. And that is really scary to me. All right, so here's another test. This is just a patch of 100% blue, and I've exported this, saved it out to my desktop. Already, the preview is slightly different. Let me just open this up and bring it over. All right, so in theory, if there was no window border, there was no shadow, there should be no line between these two spaces. It should just blend and look exactly the same. Like even in Firefox, this might be a little difficult, but like even this is like, I would argue that's the same color. I could probably take a screenshot and test, but like this is close enough for me. And this is just Firefox Nightly, the nightly build that gets updated every night. And even this, some people are arguing that this is uncolor managed. This is matching with this. And I bet if I even uploaded this picture to a website and viewed it on my phone or any other computer, it would look closer to this than this. Alright, so let's load up a different example. So here's an image I downloaded off the internet, right? 1 second, let me pull up the properties. So this image is a JPEG. It's like 2 megabytes. It's a wallpaper, just a random kind of image. Wow, this doesn't really give you much information. It's 8-bit color with bit depth of 24, 8 for each channel, and it's in RGB. Let's pull it into Photoshop. So sometimes when I open a PNG, it'll say that the file type doesn't support embedded profiles. But, okay, so this one doesn't have an embedded profile. So I do want to color manage it. Let's use sRGB. This already does not look like the original, but you haven't seen the original yet. But just focus on like some of these darker areas. This is kind of a compressed wallpaper, so there's some banding issues. It's kind of splotchy. It's blue, but kind of like a teal cyan. There's a little bit of green in the darker areas. Now, if I were to, using Image Glass again, pull up what it's supposed to look like, and I know this is what it's supposed to look like, immediately you can tell this doesn't have much green in it. It's not supposed to. Like creatively, the green might help or hurt it depending on if you like that kind of green, but it's not faithful to the original piece, right? I couldn't tell you 100% because they might have made this on a monitor that wasn't color corrected or had some weird contrast or saturation, but I'm assuming that whoever made this used a correction similar to mine, and seeing that it's completely different in Photoshop it really hurts, because Photoshop is like built to work properly. And if I use the monitor profile and bypass all the color stuff again, It's ever so slightly different. Some of these tones down here, the lighter gray, they don't actually appear in the same part of the image with this image viewer on Image Glass. So it's not 100% the same, which is what I'm going for. And then if we were to save this image again as like, I don't know, we'll just put a 2 in the file name. I'll find that and get rid of it later. Same file type. I don't know why this option is here now. I guess when I created the profile, it wasn't embedded, or it is embedded, but you can't change it. Well, now I have this option for the ICC profile. I'll leave it on as default. This doesn't actually add any quality, just file size, but I don't care right now. And optimized. Now, I'm going to use a slightly different image viewer, which allows me to just hit space and preview an image, and I can go back and forth. This is also color managed, and it works with Image Glass. So if I just swap between these two... Oh wow, that's weird. I did this test not even like 3 or 4 days ago, and I had a completely different result. These two images look exactly the same. Oh, it's so weird. I'm having a hard time understanding this. And what's even weirder is that this is going to show up on the screen cap as well. It's fascinating. All right, so that's good to know. So it's saving consistently, but not with the... I'm calling this the preview. This is the preview window in Photoshop. I refer to the preview in my post as being this. The preview doesn't match the output. I wonder if we try... Because I tried this a while back. I'm going to use the legacy menu. So Photoshop is able to open an image, and without making any changes, it's able to export and save. Export or save, I guess. I always thought those were interchangeable as pretty much the same. I wasn't able to achieve this a while ago, and I don't know what changed. Because I used to be able to just open one of those images, not make any changes to it, and then save it. And looking at it in a color managed or uncolor managed viewer, they were completely different. This is working as intended. It just looks like garbage in Photoshop. So in theory, I could just always use this monitor preview, and for the most part, I would be on the mark. It's not exactly the same, but it's way better than working with this and getting this. So it's fascinating. I picked a lot of blue images because it seems to be way more impactful, this color difference on the blues. Yeah, so I've reinstalled Photoshop, I've messed around with Windows, and it's interesting because I don't know what happened. Like before I even had my i1 Display Pro, like even before I started color correcting and doing color management, it just kind of worked out of the box, like using the default color settings in Photoshop and using unmanaged or uncolor managed image viewers, like just in Windows or on like Firefox or Chrome. Like everything just looked right, and I assumed that was the way it was supposed to work. But now that I'm kind of going down the rabbit hole and learning more about color management and different color correction settings, now I'm running into this issue. I don't really remember having this issue running the i1 Display Pro, the Profiler software on Windows 10, but ever since I switched to DisplayCal, I think that's where I'm running into my issues. Like, is this ICM profile not compatible with Photoshop? Like, if I go to the color settings, here, you can do this little trick. I can't believe you have to do this to see if it's recognized or not. It does show up in Photoshop, and it's correct. This is the date that I was messing around with reprofiling and recalibrating. It does show up, it is recognized, but can Photoshop even work with an ICM combination file, whatever this is? Is this the right observer? Like, if Photoshop isn't like broken, then where's the issue here? Because the only inconsistent part of the workflow now seems to be just Photoshop. Even though, not even a week ago, when I was working on this last, I couldn't even save an image without altering it and have it look the same. So this is, I'm going crazy. I don't have the answers. I've been asking around, and people keep just telling me, oh, you just calibrate it, get a monitor profile, go in Photoshop, do a working space, and embed your profile, and it should just work, right? Well, it's not working, and people aren't believing me, so here's this video. I'm open to any and all suggestions. I can do some more testing if you want. Oh yeah, before I end this video, I should show you the whacked RGB test. We can do that right now. Alright, so this is the whacked RGB test. Whacked RGB, there's a whole website devoted to it. It's got all the information. As far as I can tell, it's a custom color space that is intentionally sabotaged so that if you're using an uncolor managed viewer or an image viewer that doesn't acknowledge embedded profiles, it'll just look like garbage. Like, let's just open this JPEG with the whacked RGB. Open with, I guess Photos would be the one in Windows, right? Oh no, okay, so, wait, is that color managed now? Hello? Is Paint color managed? Okay, cool, here we go. So let's zoom out a bit. So this is what the image looks like with an unmanaged color viewer. It's like all purple and blue, skin tones look like garbage. These color chips are way off. Here are some recognizable objects. These are just, it looks awful. I'm just gonna move this over here. But if I use Image Glass or my other previewer, it just comes up, it looks great. These color chips kind of match some I have that I can just hold up kind of next to my monitor, even though emissive light is different than absorbed and reflected light. I can tell that this monitor is calibrated properly because they're close enough. And like Image Glass, the other one, if I open this up, this looks proper as well. And this is the tool I've been using. Well, these two viewers I've been using to test images. And that's an interesting discovery. So apparently the built-in Photos app, which I haven't used in years, this must have been updated to acknowledge embedded profiles, because this looks like it passes the test as well. And maybe this is not an exhaustive test. Maybe like there's something I'm missing, and none of these are color managed, and Photoshop is supposed to be right or whatever. But like, I'm only getting the Photoshop results in Photoshop. And if it's inconsistent with everything everywhere, then my images will be inconsistent to all of my audiences, which is absolutely not what I want. So I'm just kind of at a loss, and I hope that somebody will be able to enlighten me so that I can use properly calibrated displays, properly color managing stuff in Photoshop and viewing images and embedding profiles, so that in theory my images look the same everywhere.